Alexander Reyes was the most powerful and feared mafia boss in the city. 15 months ago, his wife walked out of his life without any warning. He told himself he didn't care. He told himself he was fine alone. But one late-night phone call changed everything. A nurse from the hospital said just 5 words that shook him to his core. "Sir, you're the father." What he discovers next will change his entire world forever. Stay till the end, because this story has twists you will never see coming. Alexander Reyes sat alone in his office, staring at the empty glass in his hand. The city outside glowed with lights, but inside his room, everything felt dark and quiet. It had been 15 months since his divorce from Isabella, and yet, some nights, the pain felt as fresh as the day she walked out the door. Alexander was the head of the most powerful crime family in the city. Men respected him. Enemies feared him. But none of that mattered anymore, not since Isabella left. Power meant nothing when the one person he truly loved was gone. He poured himself another drink, trying to push away the memories. Their wedding day, her smile, the fights that came later, fights caused by his secrets, his dangerous world, and his inability to open up. In the end, Isabella couldn't handle living in constant fear, always wondering if he would come home safe. She begged him to change, to choose a different life. But Alexander, blinded by pride and loyalty to his family business, refused. And so she left. Alexander closed his eyes, remembering the final argument. "I can't keep living like this, Alexander," Isabella had shouted, tears streaming down her face. "I deserve peace. I deserve honesty." He hadn't stopped her. He had let his pride speak instead of his heart. Now, 15 months later, he still regretted every single moment of that night. His phone rang suddenly, breaking through his thoughts. He glanced at the screen. Unknown number. Normally, he would ignore calls like this, but something told him to answer. "Hello," Alexander said, his voice rough. "Is this Alexander Reyes?" A woman's voice asked, calm but urgent. "Yes, who is this?" "I'm calling from St. Mary's Hospital," the woman said. "I'm sorry to bother you so late, but this is important." Alexander's chest tightened. "What happened? Is someone hurt?" "No, sir, nothing like that," the nurse replied gently. "We have a patient here, Isabella Reyes. She listed you as emergency contact." Alexander's heart skipped. "Isabella? Is she okay? What's wrong?" There was a brief pause on the line. "She's fine, sir. She just gave birth a few hours ago." Alexander froze completely, his mind struggling to process the words. "Gave birth? I don't understand." "Sir," the nurse said carefully, "you're the father." The room seemed to spin around him. Alexander's hand gripped the phone tightly, his breathing suddenly shallow. That's not possible," he whispered. "We've been divorced for over a year." "I understand this must be a shock," the nurse said kindly. "But the baby was born today, and Isabella listed you as the father on the records." Alexander sat in stunned silence, his mind racing back through time. Isabella had left exactly 15 months ago. If the timeline matched, it meant she had been pregnant when she walked out that door, carrying his child without ever telling him. Why didn't she tell me?" Alexander asked, more to himself than to the nurse. "I can't answer that, sir," the nurse replied. "But I think it would be best if you came to the hospital." Alexander's throat felt tight. Anger, confusion, and something unfamiliar, fear, rushed through him all at once. "I'll be there soon," he said quietly, ending the call. He sat motionless for several minutes, staring blankly at the wall. A child. His child. Isabella had carried his baby alone, without telling him, without giving him the chance to be there for her. Why would she keep something so important a secret? Alexander stood up abruptly, grabbing his jacket. His hands trembled slightly as he walked toward the door. This wasn't like him. He faced dangerous men every day without fear, yet the thought of seeing Isabella again, of meeting a child he never knew existed, terrified him more than any enemy ever could. As he stepped into his car, memories flooded his mind again. Isabella's laughter, her gentle touch, the way she used to look at him, before everything fell apart. He had spent 15 months trying to convince himself he didn't need her, that he was better off alone. But the truth was, not a single day passed without thinking about her. Now, driving through the quiet streets toward the hospital, Alexander felt a strange mix of hope and dread. Would Isabella even want to see him? Would she let him near their child? Or would she push him away completely? Still hurt by everything he had done? He gripped the steering wheel tightly, forcing himself to breathe steadily. Whatever happened next, he knew one thing for certain. He couldn't turn back now. He needed to see Isabella. He needed to see his child. As the hospital came into view, its lights glowing brightly against the night sky, Alexander felt his heart pounding harder than it ever had in his life. He had faced rival gangs, dangerous enemies, and life-threatening situations without hesitation. But nothing had prepared him for this moment. Parking his car quickly, Alexander stepped out, his eyes fixed on the hospital entrance. Whatever waited for him inside those doors would change his life forever. Taking a deep breath, he walked forward, ready to face the truth, ready to face Isabella again, and ready to meet the child he never knew he had. Alexander walked through the hospital doors, his footsteps echoing on the tiled floor. The bright lights felt harsh after the darkness of the drive. Nurses moved quickly around him, but he barely noticed them. His mind was fixed on one thing only, finding Isabella. He approached the front desk. "I'm looking for Isabella Reyes," he said, his voice tighter than he intended. The receptionist checked her computer. "Room 304, third floor. But sir, visiting hours are almost over." "I need to see her," Alexander said firmly. "It's urgent." Something in his tone made the receptionist nod quickly. "Of course, sir. Take the elevator on your right." Alexander walked fast, his heart pounding with every step. When the elevator doors opened on the third floor, he felt his throat go dry. This was it. After 15 months of silence, of pain, of pretending he didn't care, he was about to see her again. He reached room 304 and stopped outside the door, taking a deep breath. Through the small window, he could see her. Isabella sat up in the hospital bed, looking exhausted but peaceful, cradling a small bundle wrapped in a soft blue blanket. Her dark hair fell loosely around her shoulders, and despite everything, she looked as beautiful as the day he first met her. Alexander pushed the door open slowly. Isabella looked up, and the moment their eyes met, the room seemed to freeze. Her expression shifted from surprise to something harder to read. Shock, maybe pain, maybe even anger. "Alexander," she whispered. "Isabella," he said quietly, stepping inside. I got a call from the hospital." Isabella's eyes dropped to the baby in her arms, then back up to him. "I see," she said softly. "I suppose they had no choice but to call you." "Why didn't you tell me?" Alexander asked, his voice breaking slightly. "Isabella, this is my child too. How could you keep this from me for 15 months? Isabella's eyes filled with tears, but her voice remained steady. "Because when I left, Alexander, I didn't just leave a marriage. I left a life I couldn't survive in anymore. I was scared, confused, and yes, I was pregnant. But I couldn't come back to that world. Not for me, and not for our child." Alexander felt a mix of guilt and frustration rising inside him. "You should have told me. I had a right to know." "And what would you have done?" Isabella snapped, her voice rising slightly. "Pulled me back into your dangerous world? Put our baby in constant danger, just like you did with me?" Alexander opened his mouth to argue, but the words caught in his throat. She was right, and he knew it. His world was dangerous. His enemies were real, and the fear Isabella lived with every day had been just as real. "I'm sorry," Alexander finally said, his voice quiet. "I know I made mistakes. I know I hurt you. But please, don't shut me out now. Not when it comes to our child." Isabella looked down at the baby in her arms, then back at Alexander, her expression softening slightly. "Do you want to see her?" she asked quietly. Alexander's breath caught. It's a girl." Isabella nodded, a small, tired smile appearing on her face for the first time. "Yes, a little girl." Alexander stepped closer, his eyes fixed on the tiny bundle in Isabella's arms. Carefully, Isabella turned the baby slightly so he could see her face, soft, delicate features, tiny fingers curled into small fists, and a small tuft of dark hair, just like her mother's. "She's beautiful," Alexander whispered, his voice thick with emotion he hadn't expected to feel. For a moment, all his anger, all his confusion, melted into something pure, love, immediate and overwhelming. "What's her name?" he asked softly. "Sophia," Isabella replied. "Sophia Grace." Alexander repeated the name quietly, as if testing how it felt. "Sophia," he whispered again, reaching out gently to touch her tiny hand. Instantly, the baby's fingers wrapped around his, and something inside Alexander shifted completely. He looked up at Isabella, his eyes filled with unexpected tears. "Isabella, I know things ended badly between us. I know I hurt you deeply. But please, let me be part of her life. Let me be there for both of you." Isabella studied him carefully, searching his face for the truth behind his words. After a long silence, she finally spoke. "Alexander, I won't stop you from knowing your daughter, but I can't go back into your world. I can't live in fear again, waiting every night to hear if you're safe or if something terrible has happened." Alexander nodded slowly, understanding the pain behind her words. "I understand," he said quietly. "I won't force you back into anything. But please, let me prove to you that I can change. Let me show you I can be the man you always wanted me to be." Isabella looked down at their daughter, then back at Alexander, uncertainty clear in her eyes. "I need time, Alexander. Time to think, to trust again." "Take all the time you need," Alexander said gently. "I'm not going anywhere." As he sat beside her, watching Isabella hold their daughter, Alexander felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Hope that maybe, despite everything, there was still a chance for them to become a family again. But even as this hope grew within him, a shadow of worry lingered in the back of his mind. His enemies were always watching, always waiting for weakness. If they discovered he had a daughter, would they use her against him, just as they had once tried with Isabella? Alexander looked down at Sophia's tiny hand wrapped around his finger, and he silently promised himself one thing. No matter what happened, he would protect his family, even if it meant facing the darkest parts of his world once again. 2 weeks passed since Alexander first held his daughter's tiny hand. Every day, he visited Isabella and Sophia at the small apartment Isabella now called home. At first, the visits were short, filled with awkward silences and careful words. But slowly, something began to shift between them. Alexander learned how to hold Sophia properly, how to make her laugh with silly faces, how to calm her when she cried at night. Isabella watched him carefully during these moments, surprised by the tenderness in a man she once thought incapable of softness. "You're good with her," Isabella said one evening, watching Alexander gently rock Sophia to sleep. "I never thought I could be," Alexander admitted quietly. "But holding her, it changes something in you." Isabella smiled faintly, but the smile didn't reach her eyes completely. There was still distance between them, walls that 15 months of separation had built brick by brick. "Isabella," Alexander said one night, after Sophia had finally fallen asleep, "I know I can't undo the past, but I want you to know, I've changed how I handle things. I've been pulling back from certain dangerous parts of my business. I want a safer life for Sophia, and for you too, if you'll let me." Isabella looked at him carefully. "Words are easy, Alexander. Actions are harder." "Then let me show you," Alexander said firmly. "Give me a chance to prove it." Before Isabella could respond, Alexander's phone buzzed sharply. He frowned, checking the message. His expression darkened instantly. "What is it?" Isabella asked, noticing the sudden tension in his body. "Business," Alexander said quickly, standing up. "I need to go." "Alexander," Isabella said, her voice edged with worry now. "Is everything all right?" He hesitated, then decided to be honest. "One of my rivals, the Moreno family, has been causing trouble. Nothing I can't handle." Isabella's face paled slightly. "Do they know about Sophia?" Alexander's jaw tightened. "Not yet, and I intend to keep it that way." But even as he said the words, doubt crept into his mind. In his world, secrets rarely stayed hidden for long. The next day, Alexander met with Marco, his most trusted man, in a private room at his headquarters. What's the situation with the Morenos? Alexander asked directly. Marco's expression was grim. They've been asking questions, boss. About your personal life. Someone mentioned seeing you at the hospital a few weeks ago. Alexander's stomach tightened. Do they know about the baby? Not confirmed yet, Marco said carefully. But it's only a matter of time before they find out. Alexander clenched his fists, anger and fear mixing together. I won't let them use my daughter as a weapon against me. What do you want to do? Marco asked. Increase security around Isabella's apartment immediately, Alexander ordered. Quietly. I don't want to scare her, but I need her and Sophia protected at all times. Marco nodded and left quickly to arrange things. Alexander sat alone, his mind racing. He had promised Isabella a safer, calmer life. Yet here he was, already pulled back into the dangerous world he swore to leave behind. That evening, Alexander visited Isabella again, trying to hide the tension weighing on him. But Isabella noticed immediately. You're worried about something, she said, studying his face carefully. Tell me the truth, Alexander. He sighed, realizing hiding things from her would only repeat past mistakes. The Morenos might know about Sophia, he admitted. I've increased security around your apartment, just as a precaution. Isabella's eyes widened with fear. Alexander, you promised she'd be safe from your world. And she will be, Alexander said firmly, taking her hands gently. I promise you, Isabella, I will protect both of you, no matter what it takes. Isabella pulled her hands away, panic clear in her eyes. This is exactly what I was afraid of. I can't live like this, always looking over my shoulder, always waiting for something terrible to happen. Isabella, please, Alexander said desperately. Let me handle this. Let me keep you both safe. Isabella shook her head, tears filling her eyes. You don't understand, Alexander. It's not just about being safe. It's about living in constant fear. I can't raise Sophia like that. Alexander felt his heart breaking at her words, understanding fully now the fear she had lived with throughout their marriage. I won't let anything happen to her, Isabella. I swear it. Isabella looked away, wiping tears from her eyes. I want to believe you, Alexander. I really do. Just as Alexander was about to respond, his phone rang urgently. He answered quickly, his face turning pale as he listened. What's wrong? Isabella asked, alarmed by his sudden change in expression. Alexander lowered the phone slowly, his eyes meeting hers with fear he couldn't hide. The Morenos know about Sophia. They've made contact, demanding a meeting immediately, or they threatened to come after her directly. Isabella's breath caught, terror flooding her face. Alexander, please, protect our daughter. Alexander stood quickly, determination replacing his fear. I promise you, Isabella, I will protect Sophia and you, no matter the cost. As he rushed to gather his men, Alexander realized this was the moment that would define everything, the moment he had to prove, once and for all, that he could truly change, and that he would do anything to keep his family safe from the darkness of his past. Alexander moved fast, calling every trusted man he had. Within an hour, extra guards surrounded Isabella's apartment building, watching every entrance, every window, every shadow on the street. Stay inside, no matter what you hear, Alexander told Isabella, his voice firm but gentle. Marco and 2 other men will stay right outside this door. Isabella held Sophia close to her chest, her hands trembling. Alexander, please be careful. I will, he said, kissing Sophia's forehead gently before turning to leave. I'll come back the moment this is handled. He met the Moreno family leader, a sharp-eyed man named Victor Moreno, at a neutral location, an old warehouse near the docks. Victor stood with several armed men behind him, a cold smile on his face. Alexander, Victor greeted. I hear congratulations are in order. A daughter, I believe. Alexander's expression stayed hard as stone. Leave my family out of this, Victor. This is between us. Victor chuckled darkly. Everything is fair in our world, Alexander. You know that better than anyone. What do you want? Alexander demanded. Control of the West Docks, Victor said simply. Give it to me, and your daughter stays safe. Refuse, and well. He let the threat hang in the air. Alexander's fists clenched at his sides. The West Docks were vital to his business, but nothing mattered more than Sophia's safety. "Give me time to think," Alexander said carefully, buying himself space to plan. "You have until tomorrow night," Victor replied coldly. "Don't disappoint me." As Alexander drove back, his mind raced through every possible solution. Giving up the docks would weaken his position significantly, but risking his daughter's life wasn't an option either. Back at Isabella's apartment, tension filled the air as Alexander explained the situation. "We can't give in to him," Isabella said, fear evident in her voice. "But we can't risk Sophia either." "I have a plan," Alexander said slowly. "But it's dangerous." "Tell me," Isabella urged. "I'll pretend to agree to Victor's demands. Buy us time. Meanwhile, Marco and my men will gather evidence against Victor, enough to expose him to the other families and the police. If we can prove he's dealing with dangerous outside connections, the other bosses will turn against him themselves." Isabella's eyes widened with worry. "And if he finds out what you're doing before you finish?" Alexander's jaw tightened. "Then we'll have a war on our hands." That night, Alexander barely slept, staying awake to oversee Marco's investigation. By morning, they had uncovered enough proof, records showing Victor secretly working with a rival cartel outside the city, breaking the unwritten rules that kept peace among the families. But before Alexander could act, chaos erupted outside Isabella's apartment. Gunshots rang through the night air, shattering the silence. "Isabella!" Alexander shouted, rushing toward the building, his heart pounding with fear. Marco met him at the entrance, his face tense. "Boss, Moreno's men attacked early. They didn't wait for tomorrow." Alexander pushed past him, racing up the stairs 2 at a time. He burst through the apartment door, finding Isabella crouched behind the couch, shielding Sophia protectively in her arms. "Are you hurt?" Alexander asked urgently, kneeling beside them. "We're okay," Isabella said, shaking. "But they're still out there." Alexander's mind raced. Victor had broken the agreement, attacking early to catch them off guard. It was time to act immediately. "Marco, show them what we found," Alexander ordered through his radio. "Send the evidence to every family boss in the city right now." Within minutes, word spread quickly among the other crime families about Victor's betrayal. Working secretly with outside enemies against the unwritten code they all followed. Anger and distrust spread through Victor's own men, weakening his forces from within. Outside, the shooting slowed, then stopped completely as confusion spread among Victor's men, unsure whether to continue fighting a battle their own allies no longer supported. Alexander seized the opportunity, leading his men outside to confront Victor directly. He found him standing alone, abandoned by most of his men, fear finally visible in his eyes. "It's over, Victor," Alexander said coldly. "Your own family won't back you now." Victor's face twisted with anger and desperation. "You think this changes anything? You'll always be looking over your shoulder, Alexander. Your family will never be safe." "Maybe," Alexander replied calmly. "But today they're safe from you." With Victor's own men refusing to fight further, Victor had no choice but to surrender, his power crumbling completely within hours. Back inside the apartment, Alexander held Isabella and Sophia tightly, relief flooding through him as the danger finally passed. "It's over," he whispered softly. "You're safe now." Isabella looked up at him, tears in her eyes, but this time they were tears of relief and gratitude. "Thank you, Alexander. Thank you for protecting us." Alexander gently touched Sophia's tiny hand, emotion overwhelming him. "I told you, Isabella, I would do anything for our family." For the first time since their reunion, Isabella allowed herself to truly believe him, seeing clearly now the depth of his love and commitment to their daughter and to her. But even as peace settled over them, Alexander knew deep down that dangers like Victor were only one part of a much larger, more dangerous world. A world he had promised to leave behind for good, if he ever wanted a real chance at happiness with the family he had almost lost. As night fell quietly over the city, Alexander held his family close, silently vowing to change everything for the better, ready to fight for a future built on love rather than fear. 3 weeks passed since the confrontation with Victor Moreno. The city slowly returned to normal, and with Victor's power destroyed, a quiet peace settled over Alexander's world. But peace outside didn't mean peace inside his heart. Every day, Alexander thought about the promise he made to himself, a promise to change, to become someone worthy of Isabella's trust again. He began making real changes. Slowly, he handed control of the more dangerous parts of his business to trusted men, stepping back from the violence that had defined his life for so long. He wanted something different now, something real. One afternoon, Alexander visited Isabella's apartment, carrying a small bag of groceries and a stuffed toy for Sophia. Isabella opened the door, surprised to see him standing there with such a simple, gentle smile. "You didn't have to do this," she said, letting him in. "I wanted to," Alexander replied. "Small things matter too, right?" Isabella smiled softly, watching him place the groceries on the counter. Over the following weeks, these small visits became a comforting routine. Alexander helped with Sophia's feeding schedule, learned her favorite lullabies, and stayed late some nights just to make sure both Isabella and Sophia were safe and comfortable. Isabella noticed the changes in him. The way he answered work calls calmly instead of with tension. The way he spoke about his business with less pride and more caution. It wasn't just words anymore. It was action, steady and consistent. One evening, after putting Sophia to sleep together, Alexander and Isabella sat quietly on the small balcony of her apartment, watching the city lights below. "Alexander," Isabella said softly, breaking the comfortable silence, "I've been thinking a lot lately." "About what?" he asked, turning to look at her. "About us," she said carefully. "About the changes you've made. I see it, Alexander. You're different now." Alexander's heart pounded nervously. "Isabella," I meant every word I said. "I want a real family, one built on trust, not fear." Isabella looked down for a moment, gathering her thoughts. "I was so scared, Alexander. Scared of losing myself in your world. Scared for Sophia's safety. But watching you these past weeks, I've seen a man willing to change everything for us." Alexander reached for her hand gently. "I love you, Isabella. I always have, even after everything fell apart between us. And I love Sophia more than I ever thought possible. I don't want to lose either of you again." Tears filled Isabella's eyes, but this time, they weren't tears of fear or sadness. "I don't want to lose you either, Alexander. I've missed you, more than I ever admitted to myself." Alexander felt hope rising within him, stronger than ever before. "Does this mean?" Isabella smiled through her tears. "It means I'm willing to try again. Slowly. Together." Relief and joy flooded through Alexander, emotions he hadn't felt so purely in years. He pulled Isabella gently into his arms, holding her close as she rested her head against his chest. "Thank you," he whispered. "I promise, Isabella, I'll spend every day proving you made the right choice." Weeks turned into months, and slowly, carefully, Alexander and Isabella rebuilt what they had lost. Alexander moved into a new, quieter home just outside the city, away from the dangerous world he once controlled completely. He kept only enough involvement in his business to ensure safety and stability, while spending most of his time being a present father and partner. Isabella watched Sophia grow, laughing more freely now, feeling safe in ways she hadn't in a long time. Alexander was there for every small moment, Sophia's first steps, her first words, her first laugh at something silly he did to entertain her. One sunny afternoon, as they sat together in their new backyard, watching Sophia play happily on a blanket, Isabella turned to Alexander with a soft smile. "Do you ever think about how different things could have been?" she asked. "If I hadn't left, if things hadn't happened the way they did?" Alexander thought carefully before answering. "Maybe things needed to happen this way," he said. "Maybe we needed the pain, the distance, to truly understand what mattered most." Isabella nodded, resting her head against his shoulder. "I'm glad we found our way back to each other." "Me too," Alexander said softly, wrapping his arm around her. "I promise you, Isabella, from now on, our family comes first, always." As the sun set gently behind them, casting warm colors across the sky, Alexander felt a peace he hadn't known was possible. Gone was the coldness, the loneliness that once filled his life. In its place was warmth, love, and a family he had almost lost forever. Sophia giggled loudly, catching their attention. She had discovered her toes, waving them happily in the air, causing both her parents to laugh together, genuinely and freely. Alexander looked at Isabella, then down at their daughter, feeling gratitude fill his heart completely. He had once believed power and fear defined his life. Now he understood clearly that love, trust, and family were the true measures of happiness. As the evening stars began to appear above them, Alexander made a silent vow to himself, one he intended to keep for the rest of his life: to protect, cherish, and love his family, no matter what challenges the future might bring. 15 months of separation had led to unexpected pain, fear, and uncertainty. But in the end, it had also led Alexander back to the two people who truly mattered most, Isabella and Sophia, proving that sometimes the most difficult journeys lead to the most beautiful destinations.